It's time for another episode of Saturday with Seniors here on KC101, brought to you by Hemingway General Contractor. Your air conditioner will be in use soon. In the coming weeks, if you haven't serviced or cleaned it, it's not going to run efficiently, so take care of that now. Have Hemingway's clean your air conditioning system. Plus, if you have a Luxair AC system, no matter who installed it, Hemingway's can maintain your warranty. When your AC is in use, why not get your furnace serviced? You can do that now, or you can replace it with a new Luxair furnace. Hemingway's General Contractor is our local factory-authorized Luxair dealer for furnaces and AC units, and they include a 10-year parts and labor warranty in your package for free. Today's guest on Saturday with Seniors is Mary Wise in our studios, and good morning, and thanks for joining us, Mary.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Well, very good. A lot of people know you around town here.
Yeah, they do.
You've done everything from decorated the ornaments that we've seen at Dickens. How many of those have you done?
I've done about 12 years of those, and people follow because they collect. They collect the ornaments, so that's one of the things I came to do, and it all happened because of perchance. Someone said, we really like your work, but you don't have on it where it's from. I said, give me a minute, and I will pull out the paintbrush, and then that was it. That was just...
And then it just went from there, huh?
Went from there. Yeah.
And now there's thousands of Dickens ornaments out there.
All over, yep.
Well, let's go, let's talk about your life and all this stuff here. A lot of people know you, and you're also involved with art in quite a few ways, too.
Yes, I do a lot of the painting for the chairs for our art charity, and that supports a high school senior for college.
Yep.
So, and I love to do that.
You like helping out with charity stuff.
I do.
I love that about you. So, Mary, can I ask, what year were you born?
1952.
1952. And where was that you were born?
Wellsboro Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hospital.
So your parents made it over in time to have... We've had people on that were delivering the backseat of the car on the way over. The doctor didn't show up at their house, at the hospital, Blossburg Hospital, all over. So pretty normal.
That in the time, if a woman had contractions, you went to the hospital. You know, I remember my dad taking my mom there for the fifth child, and it was 3 days before she had the baby. Like we're today,
Wow.
They would have just turned her and said, you're not ready, go home. But I remember sitting out in the car, and we'd wave to her in the window, and she still hadn't had the baby. You know, but it was just, that was the way it was done then.
Yeah, a long stay. My mom was in the hospital for quite a while when she had me too, several days in the hospital. It's just a typical type of thing. So it's certainly something that's changed along the way. Of course, the price to have a child too. My mom was showing me the doctor bill. It was like $2,000 to have me.
Yeah.
Now it'd be, I don't know what it'd be. It wouldn't be $2,000.
Yeah, no, it'd be a lot more. Could I address the hospital?
Sure, please.
The other day I was at the Geminer as a docent, and a lady came in, and we were talking about old times here. And my son's second birthday, he was hospitalized here at Soldiers and Sailors. And I remember going home to my mom, and my dad had brought me to town, and she said, you left that child there. And at that time, they didn't let you stay overnights and stuff like that. So I said, Mom, I do not know what to do with him. He's in better hands at the hospital. I'll go back tomorrow. So the next day I went in and saw my son, and he's managing and breathing better. And there was a bunch of women walking down the hallway. And I asked the nurse, I said, why are they here? Why are they walking down through the maternity ward? And she said, we have a lot of babies right now. And she said, they are our volunteers who come and feed the babies because they all get hungry at noon. And the other day I was telling that story, and the lady at the Geminer, she said, I was one of those. So it was just I still meet people that have given all their lives here. And I knew when I left that weekend and went back to my home in Montgomery, I knew that was one thing I had to do for this town, is to give back.
Sure.
And that's why I do.
Yes. There are a lot of very generous people in this area that really help out with a lot of stuff. So 1952, you were born in Wellsboro Hospital, and we brought home, where was your home then? Where were your parents living?
Antrim, Pennsylvania.
And what were they doing for work, your parents at the time?
Mom was a stay-at-home mom, and Dad had his own trucking business. He delivered coal and put shale on driveways, so he built a lot of driveways that were down in the Morris, Camel area.
So you were right in the village of Arnott?
Or Antrim.
Antrim, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And, your cousins lived 3-4 houses down. Your godmother lived a couple houses back. You had a grandma across the street. And so every place you were, you were watched.
You were raised by the village, not just the family.
Yeah. And, so it was a really neat thing, because people watched out for everybody's kids.
I hear that a lot from the people I talk with here, even saying when they're walking to school in the 50s that it was very common for someone to just offer and pick them up and give them a ride to wherever they were going. And, people looked out for kids and helped them out. And
and it was just the way it was,
So 1950s living in Antrim up there, how many people were working in the mines then? Was that the majority of the people one way or another associated with mining?
They were gone at that
Even at that point?
Yeah, because they had taken out the railroad tracks. The railroad used to go up through the road to Antrim, Butchco's residence. There were railroad tracks right almost up to their door. And I wondered why Dad had all these railroad ties across the way on the land he owned. And I never thought anything of it, but they had pulled them all up. So people were going into Wellsboro then to work for the glass factory, or people were moving. They went to Johnstown. They went down to Williamsport, places like that where they could find work. But there was really...
So it was kind of tough times for Antrim at that point.
Yeah.
What was in town then? I mean, now we go there, we got the Duncan Tavern, and there's a beautiful church that's a residence now. But tell me what Duncan was like in the 50s and early 60s when you were there.
We had the train station, and that was the candy store. And the Christophs had that, and we would go down there, and it was just fun to go in. They might have had a few pinball machines and stuff, but, you'd go there with your pennies and you could get the candy. There was also, the old company store was still there. Billy Howell had that, and he still maintained it. There was a potbelly stove in there, and the men used to go in there and sit and smoke a pipe or whatever and just talk and, sit around.
Sounds like a Norman Rockwell painting.
It was. Antrim would get more snow than Wellsboro. So when you talk about Norman Rockwell, I think about the snow and the Christmas and the holidays and things of that sort. So it was a good place to be raised,
Did you go to school in Antrim? There was an elementary school there. We had another guest on who had gone to the elementary school there. She didn't have too many memories of it, but do you have many?
No, I didn't. The schools were closed by then, and there were two buses that were going at that time. There was an elementary and a senior high, so there was a lot of kids. And Antrim was bigger than Wellsboro at one time, over 5,000 people that were there. But when the lumber and then the coal went out, they did have some strip mining, but it was nowhere near what
it was at its peak.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
The old mining town, Arnott, same thing. You look at the old pictures and you're like, wow, look at the size of this, and Morris Run. And
I remember my dad, he went into the mines one day with his father. He said, I will never go back in there. He couldn't stand the closeness, and he was a man who would breathe fresh air, so that's why he worked outside.
He went in the mines just to explore them, or he worked?
They went to 8th grade, I think, and my dad was an avid reader. He was a brilliant man, but he read all the time. And but he couldn't stand the closeness, and that wasn't going to be
claustrophobic. I've heard some of the mine shafts people working in 3 foot, 4 foot drifts. I mean, I can't imagine if you're in a crawl space basement all day long trying to swing a pick and work. That was tough work.
Well, I'll tell you, he would bulldoze and put in these driveways. And I got to ride with him, and I was like 5 years old. And that probably was one of the best things I ever did in my life. I got to go with my dad, and after he had delivered or whatever, we'd stop in Morris. If we were going out of Morris, we'd stop at Tunney's. If we were coming in, go to Antrim, we'd stop at Roots to get gas. And of course, with that came either an ice cream cone or a root beer or a birch beer. And sometimes we got pistachio nuts. And at that time, they were dyed red. So by the time we got home...
Fingers are all red in your lips.
Our fingers, our lips. We'd been playing in the dirt all day, but we were happy. And I remember times he'd go down to Camel, and he'd go down in the Narrows. And when you've got a dump truck, going down's not bad, but when you're coming back up on that other side, we would say, Dad, please, just get over, because we thought we were done. But those were such special times, and Mom would take our lunches and put it down in the pit, they called it. But the thing I loved the most was to go down there and pull a cold pop out of the water, because we didn't call it soda, we called it pop. But it was just neat that she stuck it in the stream, and it was ice cold, and you could sit there and have lunch with your dad. Those are just real special memories.
Your family was pretty close together.
Growing up, yes. And then we were all independent, and we go our own ways and do, but it was just really neat, and especially with your dad, you know.
Sure, those memories that you
Yeah.
have of that stuff. So groceries and stuff like that. Living in
Antrim.
Antrim, yeah. Where did people go for Wellsboro for groceries, or was there?
Here or Morris? And
Is that
a lot
store still there, Morris? There's a general store there, but I can't imagine
yeah.
doing all your groceries at that.
don't-
I mean, maybe you could, you know.
Yeah, it was Miller's at the time, and
Yeah.
it was a really good store.
I believe
And
that is the same location as,
Yeah,
as the
it's the
general
same
stores
place.
there now. Yeah, a few different owners ago,
Right.
but yeah.
Right. And we'd go to Kreger's Farm for milk because it was cheaper still to go to Morris and get gallons of milk when we had 6 kids.
The glass jugs of milk that you
Yep.
had to bring back and
Yep.
refill. The cream would float to the top.
Yep.
Remember the days before
Yeah.
homogenization there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different time, you know, and it was neat. We'd walk around town, and like I said, you didn't worry. I had girlfriends, they would walk around town. They were teenagers. And I said, when I'm 16, I'll be able to walk around with them. The only problem is they grew up, moved out of town. Never got to do that with them. But it was one thing I thought, when I get older, I'll do this too. But we played dolls, and we'd play softball or baseball and badminton. There was a baseball diamond in Antrim. I don't know if you know that or not.
There was a couple famous baseball players before your time that came from Antrim, major league ball players. So
And-
they had their own team, pretty serious team.
Yeah. My uncle Paul tried out for the Philadelphia Athletics under Connie Mack. Well, he's a Janeski, and he's short. So when he went to Philly to try out, he had to wear the Bat Boys uniform. And that Bat Boy is Connie Mack's grandson, who has been a representative in the state of Florida. So he tried out, he made a farm team, and his mother said, do you think you are going to go running around this country after we've had a depression and just play baseball? So she wouldn't let him go. So he ended up at Mergenthaler all his life, working in a factory, and then he painted signs.
Huh.
What a difference
Yeah.
in parents today. Parents would have, of course, they would have made more money today, but
Yeah.
you are not going to play baseball.
You're going to be responsible and take care of what needs to be done.
Yep.
Wow. So when you went to school, what did you think you were going to be doing with your life when you were growing up? What was your thoughts? When as a kid, what was your dream to be?
Teacher. I wanted to be a home ec teacher. My grandma lived, an alley separated our houses, and I could go across there, and Mama still had other kids at the house, and I wanted to learn from Grandma. So sewing and some cooking. I did a lot of connecting with Mom, cooking too, But Grandma, when you
Yeah.
want to get away from the younger brothers and sisters, like, go to Grandma's house. And I always wanted to do that. And then when some of these schools started closing up, Dad went to an auction, and we lived in a double house. So great uncles had lived there at one time, and then when they passed on, then it was just empty. And then he opened it up, and we had extra play area there. So he went to these schools at these auctions, and he got books. I had a chalkboard that was movable, and I had chalk and erasers. And then I didn't mind having the little brothers and sisters to sit there and be student. They didn't care for it, but
You got
I
to
could
play teacher, your dream job.
Exactly. So I always knew it was teaching.
And then did you end up eventually teaching? I don't know your
Yes.
whole background.
Yeah, I did 33 years in Milton. I taught home economics down there. And there were no jobs here at the time, so I had to leave. And my husband's job was more in that area, so I went down, and that's where I stayed. And it was so hard to leave Tioga County. That was probably one of the worst days of my life. And
Getting to Milton is a little quicker now than it was then.
Well,
Even
yes.
just getting to Williamsport is a little quicker now than it was then.
on old Route 15, yes.
Yeah.
But it was very difficult to leave these mountains. Even though there were some down there, when you start coming up Route 15 and you see a couple of mountains, there's something about being raised in this area. And as I've had foreign exchange students, they've missed their homes in Germany or Slovakia. And when we brought them up here for Dickens, etc., they'd look at the mountains, even though they're not the Alps, but you could see a
Yeah.
peace going over them, but they weren't missing home as much.
Sure. Home is where the heart is. And it's, this feels like home to me. I've lived in Tioga County 28 years, but it took a few years before it really felt like
Home.
home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it does, and I love Tioga County, and I relate to everything that you say there. So as a kid, did you come to Wellsboro often? Did you go to the movies? Did you go out to eat or stuff like that? Or did your family stay pretty thrifty with that stuff?
Well, with 6 kids,
That would be an expensive venture.
and one income, But Grandma, on Saturdays, we could come into town with her. But we had to get all dressed up. You had to be on your
Was that
best
expected
behavior.
on Saturday with most kids coming to town? And was it
I think most Saturdays or, Wednesday afternoons, well, we were in school, but Wednesday afternoons, the stores were closed.
Yeah, people forget about that. That
Yeah.
ended in the 80s or somewhere in
Yeah,
there pretty
yeah.
much, but that a lot of places closed at noon on
Right.
Wednesday.
And if you came in with my grandma, you had to make sure you wore a dress, like you were going to church, that kind of thing. But it was a treat to come in, maybe a couple times a month or every time she could get a ride in because she didn't drive. But we would go to Dunham's, and in the bakery part, they had their donuts. They were famous for their donuts, but they had something called elephant ears.
It's like a fried dough kind of thing, isn't it, or
it's
not?
Danish pastry that's rolled together in layers and layers, and it's just nothing but sugar and nuts.
And delicious.
And it just was so wonderful. And I know the place that bought the recipes from Dunham's, they never have made the elephant ears. But just a couple weeks ago, I saw one at Tops. They had made some, and I'm thinking, I know what they are. So I bought them, and I was in Philly a couple years ago, and $5 for one piece of dough, and I'm like, I don't care what it costs. It's a memory, it's one of those things. And I remember going to the candy store, probably with Grandma, or if she came in town to visit her sister, and they had the marble tables up through the middle. I don't
You're
know.
talking where the soda fountain is, where
where
Indigo
Timeless is now.
Oh, okay, yep.
They had the little tables.
Paxson's was next to it. And
Yes.
Timeless,
Yeah.
5 and dime, yep.
Yep, and they were marble, wrought iron little tables like you'd put outside, and they had little ones for little kids and for bigger kids, and then for adults. And to watch Gus and them make the sodas, because that was a soda.
It was a
When you-
phosphate soda
yes,
that would...
Yeah. And so that was neat to do that. And then as we got older, if we did go to a movie, which there weren't many of those because we couldn't get into town. And Mom, they didn't have the money to bring us in to do that. So occasionally we would stay with that great aunt. But that wasn't but 3, 4, 5 times in my lifetime as a teenager. But the Candy Kitchen was the place. But still, everybody was safe. And like I said, movies, not many.
Wow. Did you go swimming anywhere? Or...
We would do that in creeks, especially behind the Morris Catholic Church.
That was your favorite swim hole down there?
No, it was where the bigger kids might take you. The other one was between Antrim and Morris. There was a White Bridge. They called it White Bridge, and Dad would take us there on Sundays, give Mom a break. So
The road out through where Landris used to be, the dirt road?
no,
between
it's
there? Or you're talking-
between when you come down out of Antrim and you turn left to go to Morris, from that spot there down maybe 2-3 miles. There,
Okay.
Then they redid that road, so that bridge, White Bridge, was taken out.
All right.
So it was another spot, that we would swim, but nobody had pools, and
Yep.
you did little simple things that didn't cost money because you couldn't afford. As some of us have talked, we've said, where we were poor, but we didn't know it.
That's what I've heard from a lot of people. We didn't have much, but we didn't know it. We knew none the difference, or whatever way they phrased
Right,
it, and
right.
that, I don't know, whatever we're doing in this race in life. When the reality is, why are we trying to be better than someone
Right.
else financially when we
Right.
just need to be happy?
I came from a home I knew I was loved. I had 2 parents, the meal was there. We always had Sunday dinners, and most of the time we ate at the table at night too. Dad sometimes, if he was out later
Yeah.
he didn't eat with us kids, but I remember we
It was
ate
kind of a
together.
sacred time, and
Yes.
that's definitely something that's been lost over and in recent times too. I mean, I remember as a kid, it was very common for families to sit down for dinner. You asked to be excused after you were done eating. You brought your plate up to the sink or whatever, and I assume it was probably the same way in your family.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's everyone just throws something in the microwave and heads to their bedroom.
It's about eating. I remember when you were at the table, you ate what was provided. And I remember sitting there after church one Sunday because I was not eating that stew. And I think I was there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, still sitting there. But there were no microwaves and this and that and the other. Well, fast forward about 30 years, and we were still coming home for Sunday dinners for a long time. And my mother, she pulled out chicken McNuggets and fries. And I'm like, what about the meatloaf and this and that and the other she said, the grandchildren, they don't like it. So we'll make a separate meal for them. And I thought, this is not the woman I grew up with.
Yeah, the rule book changed here.
It changed when they became grandchildren.
Well, meals now, like you're saying, the McDonald's meal, the prepared meals, When you went to the grocery store, you bought staple items and made, I imagine, most of your meals are probably
Right.
made with, ingredients that you mixed yourself, not just
Yeah.
heat and eat.
Matter of fact, this afternoon my sister is showing up. We made the Polish kluski noodles, and she made some yesterday. She said, I'll bring you some in today. So we still hang on to those things that our grandma,
Traditions.
yeah, the Polish thing.
So when did you end up getting your driver's license?
16, I
So
did.
as soon as you could, pretty much, you went and got your driver's license.
And then I got a job. I worked at a restaurant, a short order cook and cleaning and doing dishes and that kind
A
of stuff.
restaurant around here?
Yeah, it was George Coolidge's Trading Post. It's as you go out of town across from, I don't know if it's an Acorn Market or what it is.
What Tag Office Products is now. I think that's where you're talking about?
It's on
No.
Route 287.
Oh, that direction. Okay.
Yeah.
The other Acorn.
Yeah, that is an Acorn. But that was a restaurant there. And, there was an older woman, and she was in charge, and then she was training us teenagers to do, and we had good times there.
Yeah.
You got to know the people, and it was
And being a
just,
short order cook at, what, just say 16 years
Yeah.
old is a pretty responsible. It takes some responsibility in that. That's
Yeah.
not just put these boxes in a stack. You
exactly. And a lot of things, they were made from scratch. Like, you might take the meat out and make your own patties and do stuff like that. But the customers made it. It was always fun to talk with them and things of that sort.
You remember what your first car was and what it cost?
I don't remember what it was, but it was green because I always want. And this is so funny because for years when Dunkin' Donut was open late at night, I went down because I was in a lot of pain and I thought if I could just get around people, I'll feel better. So I went down there, started meeting people, and over the years, those men down there, they discuss cars. And one night, they asked me that same question. Well, what was your first car? What do you drive now? And I said, I know I drive a Subaru now, but I said, I have no idea. Well, now, can you go through life not knowing what kind of a car you had or what kind of car you drove? And I'm like, color? And they would say, oh, we got to take care of her. So they did. That was a neat thing as being an older person, coming back into town.
Yeah.
So
when you were first growing up, did you have a TV in your house?
we were one of the first ones that had a TV.
Because that was right about the time period you would have been one of the first if you did. Yeah. And you got, what, one channel with a little bit of snow on it?
3.
Because you're up on the hill there.
Yeah,
So
and then they had the antenna, so they could do that. ABC, CBS, and NBC. And Dad got 6 o'clock news. You didn't dare. But I think mostly of anything, we watched the Cowboys, we watched Maverick and Gunsmoke. But as I watch them today, they're different.
It's not the Lawrence Welk show anymore on TV.
Well,
prime
let
time.
me tell you, but we did watch that. And every Saturday, my mom would we'd sit on an ottoman. There was 3 girls, one at a time, and she wanted to watch Lawrence Welk. And I think that was her way of bringing music and culture into the home. So I tried that once with my son when he was little, and he called Grandma, and he said, Grandma, this is child abuse. We have to watch Lawrence Welk. So we have laughed on that one. But, it was part of her way. And I think her aunt might have taken her to New York City growing up, and she saw the Rockettes. She always wanted us to know who they were. So she always insisted, you kids watch Thanksgiving Parade, and you see the Rockettes, and Grandpa and I will make the meal for Thanksgiving meals. So we were always watching TV. Well, that was their day to cook together. To this day, even the grandchildren, and it would be the great-grandchildren, are watching the parade instead of working on a dinner. So it's just, Grandma taught me how to do that, and I want my kids to do it too.
Sure. Good to pass on some of those traditions and stuff. So.
Yeah.
We're almost running out of time here. We've covered a lot of different things. How time flies when we do this stuff.
Yes, it is fun. It is fun.
So, looking back on life, what do you think about today's world? Do you think kids are missing out on? Obviously, they've got some things that you didn't have, and they're missing out on some things that they still could have. But
like to sit down with your mom or your dad, and just to sit and talk, or your dad to break a little branch off a tree and say, "This is a birch tree. Taste this." Or we're going to do maple syrup today on a small basis, just for us, not these big things.
Yeah.
And the kids are on so much of the
screen time, looking at phones and computers.
Yeah. And so I think they're missing out on a lot of that stuff that they might want to have later in life. But I also have a lot of hope for our future because we have some kind, caring, and brilliant young people being raised today, too. So I have hope.
Yep.
When the times look bleak, I do feel that there are those that are going to pull us through some of this stuff.
Sure. Behind just about every good kid out there, if you do your research, there's a parent that raised that kid right or taught the kid right or spent time with the kid growing up. And that makes such a difference. And, parents not just giving in and saying, well, that's no other parents do that, so I'm not going to, but just, saying, you know what, I want to raise my kid the way that I was raised.
Right. And even there are some people here that I see them, they could be taking them to Disneyland every day, and they're not. They're teaching them how to pitch a tent or drive a tractor or, some of those little things that are so basic. You know what I'm saying? Just
hunting, fishing, the outdoors, the trees, just going for a walk in the woods. It makes me so sad when I drive through a town on a Saturday afternoon. I don't see a single kid in the summertime or a nice weather day outside playing basketball in the driveway or hopscotch or riding the bicycle or skateboard or rollerblades or football or ball, tossing the ball around the yard or frisbee or all these things I did as a kid. I look at it and go, where are all the kids? What are they doing? Why are they not?
They're indoors watching or playing those games,
Yeah.
One of the fondest memories I had with my dad is we went fishing, and I was like 5-ish. I was his little buddy, I must have been. And we got to where we were going to go fishing, and I started crying. He said, "What's the matter, honey?" And I said, "I forgot my boots." That man put me on his shoulders and walked me up and down the streams to where he was going to fish. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. I just had a very wonderful parents.
Put you before, that's okay.
Exactly.
They want to make sure you had a good day. And,
Yep.
Yeah.
And with 6 children, the children got their glasses before my dad would. And we would all need them, sometimes all 6, and he would forego his until we had ours.
That's love.
It is.
Very interesting. So what are you doing these days, Mary? Let's fast forward all the way to now here.
Well, I'm doing a lot of painting, which I do give a lot to charity. Sometimes I take the money I earn from that, and I will buy a bunch of coats for kids and take them up to
so nice of you.
the welfare office, and I will and I have fun doing it because I don't have to worry about size and color and whether they like it or not. I just go to Walmart or wherever, and I will say, "Oh, I really like that. That's a Mickey Mouse or a Minnie. Bet you some kid would like that."
Yeah.
And I'll buy things like that, and I'll donate a lot of stuff like that.
You got a big heart. Your parents taught you well.
They were good people.
Yeah. And you have kids of your own?
I have 1 son, and I've raised 3 stepchildren.
And are they good people like you too?
Well, I think they are. They've each had their issues growing up, but
I did too. Believe me, we all fell off the tracks. It's just what you do after when you fall down, get up.
Yep, exactly. So, I feel blessed.
Well, good. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Mary Wise here on KC101 Saturday with Seniors. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been Saturday with Seniors. It's been brought to you by Hemingway General Contractor. For heating or air conditioning installation or service, call or text Alan or Brian at Hemingway's 662-6997. Ask about Luxair, the financing options and the rebates for veterans and most emergency service personnel. Hemingway General Contractor, 662-6997. And by the way, you can hear all these episodes on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com.